All right. Hello, welcome. I am Jen. If you have not attended a Rock Technologies webinar, I am going to be the moderator for today's session. We are thrilled to have you all joining us today. We are going to be talking about modernizing your state GIS, how state GIOs are leading the charge. For the next 60 minutes, we're going to engage in this important discussion about how state GIS leaders are modernizing their operations, the challenges that they face, and the vision that they have for the future. And we have our three panelists here that I will let them introduce themselves in just a moment. But before we dive into that, we have a few quick housekeeping notes. We do want this to be interactive. We have left, hopefully, 15 minutes for open Q&A. So as we're going through our conversation today, please feel free to drop your question into the Zoom Q&A, and we will address those in the order that they come in once we get to that part of the conversation. Our format today for this webinar will be a facilitated panel conversation where we'll explore some key topics with our panelists before opening up the floor to you for the Q&A. And just so that you know, in 2025, this idea of modernizing and talking to GIS leaders, that's really our theme at Rock Technologies for a series of webinars over the course of 2025. So this is just the first in a series. And so we look forward to seeing you as we continue into future webinars. Because honestly, as we all know, through collaboration, we can learn from each other and drive innovation in GIS. So today's webinar is being recorded, so please don't worry if you miss anything. The recording will be made available to all registered attendees after this event. So just really quickly, a little bit about Rock Technologies, of which I am a part of. Our mission is really to help organizations like yours unlock the full potential of GIS in the cloud. As an Esri Platinum business partner and Kubernetes specialty partner with over 160 global clients across Esri's key verticals, we focus exclusively on architecting, deploying, and managing ArcGIS Enterprise and desktop applications in both cloud and hybrid environments. So now let's talk about our panelists. I'll just ask each of you to please introduce yourselves to our participants, share a little bit about your role and your work in state GIS. So I will first start with Mr. Powers.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. Hi, I'm Donovan Powers, State GIO for Ohio. We are part of the Department of Administrative Services in the IT group. We manage GIS for not only other state agencies that could use us, some of them have their own GIS staffing. We'll pick up those agencies that maybe don't have expertise in that. We also interface with our federal government counterparts, as well as local government at the county and city levels.
Great. Ms. Martin?
Hi, my name is Heidi Martin, and I'm the State GIS Coordinator for Wyoming. I've been in my role for almost 2 years, and I've been with the state for almost about 22 years. I work for the Department of Enterprise Technology Services, which, much like Donovan's agency, serves other state agencies as the IT department for the state of Wyoming. I'm responsible for the coordination of statewide geospatial data initiatives, coordination, training, and policies. I'm currently working on some efforts related to data sharing and contract consolidation as well. We currently have about 15 agencies that are using GIS technology, and with known growth in the future, I have a handful that I'm also working with to move that way. And I'm working with the agencies in federal, city, state, across the board, and counties. So.
Awesome. And Ms. Moser.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Taryn Moser. I am the West Virginia State GIS Coordinator, and I am housed within the Division of Commerce for the state of West Virginia, which is a kind of interesting, different spot. My office is actually at the West Virginia Geologic and Economic Survey for the state of West Virginia. So my position's a little bit differently aligned than Heidi and Donovan's. So I am directly under the state geologist funny story, I used to work there 15 years ago too. So I've come full circle and I'm back at the Geologic Survey, which I'm very happy about. Um, my office coordinates and, puts out initiatives for geospatial, whether it's education, trainings. We work with all of our state agencies throughout the state, and we also facilitate the West Virginia GIS Tech Center at WVU. It's actually a state agency, but that is our clearinghouse for the state for geospatial data. So we have that entity also, and we work with West Virginia University to get research students in there also. So it's kind of all enveloping, and I work with all the different departments that utilize GIS, or if they do not have those capabilities, like a lot of our municipalities or counties, that's where we put the West Virginia GIS Tech Center in to help them to implement those solutions or strategies, or even to be able to host or to be able to digitize data easier. I've only been in this role for almost 2 years, but I think we've gotten a lot accomplished, and I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody else is accomplishing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this panel today. And just really quickly for our participants, we're going to start by defining modernization. We're then going to talk a little bit about the vision for modernization in the future. And then we will end with challenges that we all know we encounter in this space. And then we'll move to Q&A. So if we first take the first question to start the discussion. When we think about defining modernization, so what does modernizing GIS mean to you in your state? And I'll start off with Heidi and then let the other two chime in afterwards.
Thank you. So I think in Wyoming right now, it means that modernizing GIS means improving processes to include newer technology to ensure better security, to have those more efficient workflows, and better data management in general. I think every GIS user and agency is at their own level, and knowing what their needs are and being able to meet those needs kind of help those baby steps moving forward.
Taryn, do you want to go?
I'm currently in West Virginia, helping to revise our West Virginia code to facilitate what we're speaking of the digitization, the security of that data. Also, one of the pieces of legislation I'm working on was effective in 1987, so we're still talking paper maps. And we literally have map books that we hand draw into currently in the state of West Virginia for our authoritative boundaries. So we're working our way through the early 2000s basically and looking at what we can do to modernize not only our code but also our workflows, because with the technology that we work with, it's so rapid, and so keeping up with all of it and trying to keep everybody moving along those routes. Even when we look about just moving from, I still have folks in my office using ArcView, like moving them to Arc Pro, like Heidi said, baby steps. So there's a lot of things that we're currently doing, but it takes a lot of those little things to make a big thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Donovan, how about you?
Yep. So I agree with everything I've heard so far. We've all got our gremlins that we're trying to fix. I see GIS is just another IT technology that's ever growing. There's always new things, new ways to do things. So with that, you're always going to have to continually modernize your systems, make processes better, and people are going to have to get training in that. And the ultimate goal is to make this easy for your customer base so that they can, one, create these apps easier and better, and access it easier and better. The front end of applications is getting a lot cleaner and it's continually evolving. So We're looking to keep ourselves close to the bleeding edge, but not on the bleeding edge. We're not leading technology here. We're just trying to make as much available as we can with stable platforms. So that's where we want to be.
Well, it's interesting. You guys all talked, you had similar themes. But again, I don't know if Heidi or Donovan, you can speak to kind of the point that Taryn was bringing up around, paper and going back to the 80s or the 2000s, right?
Mhm.
That's a big gap when you talk about modernization, especially here we are in this very remote digital world, even just today in this conversation.
Mhm. So we do have an agency that is still, printing out their maps after they have used them, made them electronically, and just being able to search those different, you know, sets of plans or other recorded documents. I met with that agency and we were able to kind of make a game plan, and I was able to share what other states are doing in that avenue. And so they are now moving towards, having those maps be digital, and those, it's PDF format, but just having those be able to be searchable to the public, I think
Yeah.
is important.
Well, and making it searchable and available for the public, Donovan, you mentioned it's really important to modernize for your customer base, right? And that using that as your driving force, not just to modernize, but to really keep in mind who are you modernizing for, right? What do they need? Well, it's interesting, you're talking about that baby steps. If you were to kind of put yourself or your state on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being fully modernized and efficient and 1 being challenged and outdated, where would you put your state? And again, it's important to really understand, right? We all have goals and we all have gremlins. I like that word. I want to use that when we get to the challenges. But where do you think you are today?
Good for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I've got two numbers for you. Internally, I see us as a 4. Externally, I think people might see us at a 5 or 6. And
What's the distinction?
yeah, uncovering things that may look good on the surface versus what the process is on the back end. Maybe there's some manual things that we need to automate. Um, the constant struggle to upgrade the existing pool of applications we're already managing, all kinds of different things that are on the back end of that. So we're definitely trying to modernize as we go, and we've got some real big steps we're planning on taking to help kind of accelerate things. So it's a lot to do with planning and getting things laid out in front of you so that you can make these giant leaps with low cost, low effort, and get big wins out of it. So those are our priorities for now.
Yeah, I can go next on this one. So I think I'm not going to throw a number out there because it kind of depends upon what the use case is. Some of our agencies, I think right now, Wyoming's kind of around the middle. But there's always like a new and shiny technology out there that, it's our duty to research that and to ensure that that right fit is for the right people and the right agency and the right use case. Sometimes you don't know what that looks like, or even what questions to ask to get to that point. I think sometimes you have to have the right people in the right roles at the right time. I found like in my role, like I said, I've only been here for, a little less than 2 years, leaning on other states who have been there, done it, have more experience has been a lot, very fruitful in my experience. However, in some of the state of Wyoming agencies, they are the leader in that GIS technology. And so other states are looking at them for that. So like for that agency, they're more at like a 9. Other agencies are, they might be at like a 4. So I think it kind of depends upon what use case you're looking at.
Well, and if I can just ask, it's interesting. I don't know if I inferred this from your conversation, but like the benchmarking, right? If you're talking about agencies within your organization that are looking and talking to others, if there's a higher benchmark, there might be a clearer path to
Mhm.
getting a higher score. Got it.
Right, exactly.
I will have to say that our geospatial community in West Virginia, I think, is the strongest it's ever been. And within that community, I would definitely give us a 9 to a 10 because we work so well together and we come up with solutions so well together and planning and, coming up with strategic plans. From our state agency perspective, I'd say we're at like a 7 or an 8. We all work really well together, so that is a huge plus, especially helping with moving forward and not creating, redundancy within data or products. I think we do a really great job at that. When it comes to, and as GIS people, I think we've known this our whole entire career, we're typically an army of one. So having those communities that we can reach out to and find solutions to is really, really, really great. My office is still an army of one. So, but when it comes to, working with our current legislature or looking at, planning term for geospatial products and solutions, it's something that it's kind of like that mystery thing. When I start talking about putting together programs for imagery and LiDAR, they're like, well, we have Google. So, you know what I mean? So it's like we've been educating people our whole entire careers what GIS is, what IT does, all these different facets. So it's sometimes really hard to just characterize it in just one number or one figure because it's kind of like all over the board. So I think here in West Virginia, like I said, we work really, really well as that geospatial community. I've been doing a ton of outreach and hoping to get to, all of our regional planning councils. I just sent out 230 personalized letters for my office so that everybody understands the boundary and annexation for census. I mean, start as small as you can and working your way up, and putting a face to it. And once they pick that fruit off that tree, when I worked in private industry, I started out on my web map with having 2 to 3 users. When I left, I had 1,700 users. So it's like once you get that ball rolling, with that comes a lot of planning. Once you get that ball rolling, GIS has been my solution to everything in my path and for my career, and it's been extremely rewarding.
Well, thank you. I think you're right. Numbers are hard, but I do think going back to this idea of benchmarking is important. And I think that I think it's valuable for us to kind of be honest with ourselves. And say how are we defining modernization, right? Taryn, I think it's great. Your definition of modernization is around that collaboration, and you really feel like that collaboration is what's driving a higher score for you. And I think Heidi, when you mentioned some departments have a higher score, some have lower scores, and Donovan, when you're like, I'm a perfectionist, I get that, right? We all have a journey that we're on, and we just want to be able to kind of again talk to one another and understand how everyone, not just you three here, but we have all these participants. And so I would love to just ask that question of everyone. If you were to think about how you define modernization in light of our panelists sharing and hearing how they've ranked themselves, how would you decide to rank your GIS organization? I know we don't have only state and local government represented here, but having that power in numbers and understanding that we're all along in this journey together is important. So as people are answering the poll from our participants here, I will move into kind of looking at the future. And I think, Taryn, you touched a little bit on this when you were just talking about kind of your growth. But if we can think about if today you guys have your own numbers, you've benchmarked those as how modernized you feel like your state is, and you think about looking into the future, right? Maybe that's 3 years, maybe that's 5 years, maybe it's a little bit longer, depending on what your roadmap looks like. What does the vision look like for you guys, and what does success look like? I think I'll go back to the perfectionist and let Donovan answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've had a lot of years of new technology popping up, and as a former technician myself, I know what it's like. You get this new shiny object in front of you, you want to build something with it. So we've got multiple applications and multiple platforms. And one of the goals we have is to streamline that into a single location as much as possible, while upgrading as well. And key to that is having Rock come in and help us manage that platform. So that frees up one more person to help move these apps and upgrade them. So that's a key component of what our plan is moving forward. One of those is upgrading outdated apps and then making data easier for the public to get access to. While we have all these great data sets for Ohio, they are meant and downloadable for technicians. But we want to make this data a viewable source for non-technical people to experience the imagery and the LiDAR and all the other data sets we've got out there. While we do that quite a bit, it's got a long way to go to make all of it available.
Heidi, do you want to go?
Sure. So in Wyoming, we're working on a lot of the groundwork for the growth. That includes, being able to collaborate with the agencies in utilizing the portal. We also utilize Rock Technologies. They recently spun up our own ArcGIS Enterprise portal. And I'm working with the different agencies, meeting with them, larger agencies, smaller agencies, seeing what their use cases are, and that kind of stuff, working through that right now. And I think, one of the key components is, those authoritative data sets and being able to share those more widely and being able to state that those are authoritative or what part of those are authoritative. I think success to me is being able to find the data set, like the tech being able to find that data set, knowing that that data set even exists, what that metadata looks like. I think just having that communication with your stakeholders. I think being able to offer more resources for the agencies, whether that be in training or workshops, or like say a GIS user group where it's just the state of Wyoming employees who use GIS, being able to have that location to go have those discussions at. And, with turnover, sometimes you don't know who to go touch base with regarding those things. So, I think just moving forward is success. Maybe it's baby steps. It doesn't have to be 100% all the time. Those quick wins can mean just as much as those monumental wins.
Yeah.
So in West Virginia, we are currently building more of a foundation. We had an executive order back in 1993 that actually created our West Virginia GIS Tech Center and also the GIS coordinator position for the state of West Virginia. We did a lot in the beginning, and then it kind of fell off and COVID didn't help, but and now we're in a technological different era than when that original executive code was. So we're kind of making a better framework of what that looks like in today's world and trying to help guide our other state agencies along those routes. We're also getting ready to work through our data clearinghouse, cleaning that up, archiving things, being able to get, like Donovan was saying, all of these in the eyes of someone that's not a technical person. This is data. It's being created by the states, and it should be available for our state citizens. And so building out that groundwork and getting those educations, those trainings, and fully supporting all of the different data collections that are going on in the state. So there's a lot of just moving pieces right now, and we need to get those better functioning. It's like an all-wheel drive, the wheels sometimes move independently, but you want them to move all together right now. So it's getting that framework back together. And I think with the amount of emphasis and excitement through the GIS professionals within the state of West Virginia, we're really starting to make that move forward with strategic planning and making that a good framework for the state of West Virginia.
I'm curious, you guys all talked about, foundation, right? Getting the foundational pieces there. I think because there are so many moving pieces and because there are quick wins and monumental gains, it's like, how did you guys go about, I don't know, prioritizing or figuring out where to start or how to kind of take off a piece and get started here? I think that would be interesting because there's so many pieces to what everybody's saying.
Strong work ethic and like parsing down your life to where you only allow yourself to work on certain projects for a certain amount of time. I don't check emails on Tuesdays. Like that's just how like my mind works to kind of like structure. So I never feel like I'm truly missing a person. You want to be integral into them moving forward. So sometimes it is hard, but it really comes down to planning and timing. I mean, it really does.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Taryn's all over it with the planning piece.
Mhm.
You have to form a plan, and that's key. I don't believe in luck so much. It's just being ready for an opportunity that pops up, and it seems like the opportunities always happen when you least expect it. So if you have a plan in place, then that opportunity pops out, you know exactly what you're going to do.
Mhm. Yep, and I'll piggyback on Donovan as well, and what Taryn said too. Knowing what is out there as far as funding opportunities, knowing being ready for those, instead of when they hop across your desk, you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? You have a plan in place already. You have those stakeholders that you've been talking to. You have a file with all your little notes and research and going to the different conferences and going to different trainings and webinars and that kind of stuff helps you kind of set up for that framework as well. So
Right. So if resources weren't a constraint, right? If you weren't just one person, or if you had the budget that you needed and wanted, is there one initiative that you would implement today that you're not able to for whatever reason?
So I can go ahead and start on this one. I think if resources weren't a constraint, and even though we're already, putting forth baby steps and we have a good foundation on this one, I think having Wyoming be a little bit further on Next Gen 911 would be key. We're discussing within our Next Gen 911 GIS work group and with other states who are a lot further along than we are, like what those workflows look like, what resources are available, those education tools, how the state repository is going to work, and how that's going to function. We're coordinating with those stakeholders and making great strides, but and recently, I think it was August of 2023, we adopted the Wyoming Next Gen 911 GIS data model, and that was key in moving forward. There's a lot of benefits to like the local, state, national level being involved with Next Gen 911, and there's a lot of other parts as far as like NENA standards and whatnot. But having those authoritative based data layers that are going to be able to be shared and be utilized by a lot of other agencies and stakeholders, there's a lot of moving parts, with the upgraded data and the infrastructure and the interoperability with Next Gen 911. So I think that's kind of one of our key ones right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say more data, absolutely more data. And we would spend a lot more time with outreach, getting to know all the different constituents. There's so many different GIS people in the state that one or two conferences a year is not enough time to spend with them to really understand what their struggles are and to see where we could help at the state level. One of the things that a couple of folks had mentioned in our different user group organizations was they expect more standards to come out of our office. So not necessarily required standards, but suggested standards for data schemas, things like that. And that was music to my ears. I absolutely would love to put that together. And of course, they're going to be involved in those standards. So anything we can do to work with the community more is always a benefit.
Yeah, in West Virginia, if I had the largest budget I could ever have access to, I would put in place something as simple as a biannually or annual imagery program, so data. We currently do not have that in the state of West Virginia. So instead of the state kind of overseeing that, whether it's through my office or, wherever they deem it necessary, but we have 55 flights that we try to fit in from the end of February to April. Okay. So granted, they're not happening every year, but it is just such a parsed together jigsaw puzzle of inconsistent data. Yeah, we have it for the whole state, but it would be great to be able to utilize that imagery, buy it once or fly it once and use it multiple times. And if we had a more consistent data layer, we would be able to do so much more with that, to be able to provide decision making for whether it's our upper management within our legislature or, the forester that's working on a hydrologic modeling for red spruce. So there's so many different things that could be done with that one product.
Nice. Those are all really great initiatives. But I guess let's switch over to what everybody wants to not talk about and talk about. I don't know, misery loves company. To achieve all of these steps, to kind of work towards this vision, to potentially launch these new initiatives is not without challenges. And so I just want to take a few minutes to talk about kind of what's holding back your states. And I understand budget's probably going to be a big part of this, but if you think about what are the biggest obstacles you face in modernizing your GIS operations, if we think about it from like a technical and a financial and an organizational lens, where are one of the, are all three of them really the biggest challenges? Are there certain key areas? Taryn, I'll start with.
Of course, budget is the overall enveloping one. But when it really comes down to it, I think it's a true understanding of what GIS is capable of. I understand it, but it is not something that everyone understands. And overcoming that, I've just done a simple web map for some of my higher ups, and it is amazing the feedback I get. Oh, can you add this? It just starts that wheel going. But for the modernization piece, it really truly is funding. Within the state agencies, of course, they're all doing the best that they can with the resources that they do have available. But I think when we start updating our GIS Tech Center, I think that that'll be a really big piece of that puzzle to help people and see all of the data that we do have there and getting it, not saying it's not organized now, but it's just a pretty basic interface. So, modernizing it, putting some flashy LiDAR and fun stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I think alongside like the budget funding side of it is time. There's only a certain amount of time you have. Y'all, I don't know about how you guys, but I want to do it all and I want to do it now. And I want to have it perfect, like Donovan said. And, when you're learning a new technology to implement, there's a lot to consider. This includes, like the data integration and the accessibility, the governance, the standards, and the learning aspect of who it might affect and how it might affect them. Long time ago, a good friend of mine once told me some advice: you can do it all, but you can't do it all at the same time. And so prioritizing, kind of going back to what Jennifer touched on before, prioritizing what needs to be done now versus what can be integrated or applied later is also really important to strategize. And there's also like the buy-in portion with everyone as well. So
planning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, having that, 1 to 2 year, 3, 5. I mean, I've got ideas for, 5 years out that I'm not sure how I'm going to implement them, but I'll get them done.
Yeah, one of the biggest tricks with the planning is, you folks all know, with state budgets, you got to plan those things out ahead too, and see what you can get done in that time frame, and then you never know how long it's going to take to get the purchase. So it's definitely a juggle to try to make the plan and the budget work together. So it's really just having that idea and a plan put together in place ahead of everything, so that when somebody decides to give you a pot of money towards the end of a fiscal year, you're ready to go.
Yep.
And that's kind of key. It's always about finances or people or both, depending on if you want to contract something out or but really anything outside of that, you just got to be ready with where you need to take your group, and having that communication with your internal staff, your internal customers, and even the GIS folks and the public. See where they want to be, and then form your plan that way.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently or earlier to have set yourself up for success with this modernization and this maybe 2-5 year plan?
Yeah, I can start
Just
that
getting
one.
started.
So I've been in this job about 4 years now. And one of the first things that I did coming in was, of course, you always try to learn what everybody's doing. Already being with the state 20 years, I knew a lot about what was going on here. But I didn't have enough detail. And if I would have spent those first couple of months just getting all the details and figuring it all out, I could have more strategically applied a plan than more ad hoc, which I started with. Now I've got a giant plan all ready to go and everything's kind of in place. But I did not look at it in a big enough picture. So we were chasing issues here and there. And the bigger problem was actually what the public would see, and having a front end that shows everything. You've got all your data here, and maybe even an easier way to view all the data we have. So from the outside, it looks pretty good because you don't know what you're missing. But internally, it's like, oh man, we've missed the boat on a lot of things. And educating internal folks would have been another good thing, because they start going off on large contracts that don't even play into the enterprise GIS. And it's like that, trying to reel that in when they're going to procurement is really a big problem. So having things out in front of them before they have to build a project that's going to integrate GIS, that's where you want to be. So that's where we're headed.
Yeah. I think in Wyoming, being a fairly new person, one of my first tasks was to meet with each one of the agencies and to see how they're utilizing GIS, looking at their software needs, if there was anything that's kind of hanging out there that they need help with, or that I could facilitate those conversations with, maybe say another agency or, with a software company. I think not being afraid of asking those questions I do a lot of research before I meet with an agency or really with anybody. And everyone has their own knowledge base and everyone has their own background and it's all different. And I think one of the assumptions of me coming into this position was that, everyone has the same background. Everybody knows the same things. And I found out rather quickly that everybody is not like that. And so, knowing even just how to use the software, or, as I dove into different projects, I learned who had that skill set that I needed or, where they could point me in that right direction. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting before Taryn, it's almost, I think Donovan and Heidi both are talking about this, like, do I just get in and get started ad hoc, or do I just do I need, how much do I need to know? And, Heidi, you're talking about something very similar, which is like, oh, I think we're all coming to the same level, but how do I get enough knowledge and go deep enough? And it's interesting to, to come in and to take this role to oversee and really try and figure out how much movement do you make and how much information do you need. I'm curious, Donovan, would you have had that perspective if you hadn't done things ad hoc? I mean, I know hindsight's 20, it's like we're talking about this. If I could go back, I'd be more strategic, or if I could do something different, I'd get all the details. But I'm just curious, do you think it would have worked? Do you think you would have, the ad hoc, isn't that part of it?
Well, absolutely it is. I think the biggest problem I ran into was just trying to attack things one at a time. And really, if I would have had a holistic picture of all the things that we needed to address, we could have changed that strategy up and taken care of things in a different speed and different fashion. So we could have been where we're at now a long time ago.
Right.
And refocused.
So realizing that things are not siloed, that they are connected.
Absolutely.
Going back to Taryn said, there's 55 flights. How could we make one out of that? If we're not looking at it holistically, that makes sense. Taryn, how about you? Like, if you think back, is there something you would have done differently or better earlier?
Yeah, I think that I would have actually put together more of a plan. I think the hardest thing for me when I came into my position was I didn't get to retain the last 10 years of what had been done. So because that gentleman retired and all of that institutional knowledge just went away. And so it's not something that I could have done, but having some kind of plan, having some kind of idea of what all those projects were he was working with, who he was working with would have been really insightful and helpful to me. Um, Other than that, I mean, I feel like I'm just learning so much every day about what makes all of this tick, whether it's, from looking at it from a perspective of government and state government, or just looking at who can I have do this? Who can I have help me along this process, So I've always asked a lot of questions, so that's never been my downfall. And I've had a lot of really good guidance from, my colleagues and my peers, and taking that all in. Yeah, I've probably done a lot of things kind of ad hoc right now, but I'm learning how to pull that in now and really fine tune what should be done and could be done to help modernize our GIS in the state.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask the audience here similarly if there's something that you wish you had done differently or earlier to set up your state or organization up for success. How would you answer that question? While we're asking people to share their responses. I will say that on the earlier poll questions, most people, the highest percentages were a 5 and a 7. There was definitely a gamut all the way. Nobody gave themselves a 1 or a 10, but there was definitely a gamut between 2 and 9. But 5 and 7 seem to be the early runners for those who have joined us today. Well, so now we're going to switch over into the Q&A. And the portion of this, and there's a couple that have come in, so I'm going to start with those first, and then we have a couple that came in actually via email earlier too. So I think the one that everybody can kind of see in the chat, what is your approach for providing spatial data as web services and process automation? Does anybody have a response to Keith's question there?
Yeah, I'll take it. So, right now we have limited amounts of web services for all of the data we have, but that's only if you look at it from the complete sets of data that we have. So we've got 4 different complete statewide imagery flights and 2 different LiDAR flights, as well as a number of what we call buy-ups, but enhanced flights at county levels. And it's been almost 20 years now since we started flying. We only offer that data as a download. We have one image service. So our needs are greater than just one image service. We're looking at doing upwards of 8. So we've got the LiDAR that we're going to try to get out as a service as well. I have a 3D LiDAR viewer. And all of the different imagery products we're going to have as separate image services, and as well as process LiDAR. So we're looking at having a digital elevation model image services out there as well. So our intent is to make a lot more of our data available as a service. We do have statewide parcels now, that's a service. But we have a number of data sets that aren't, and we're trying to get that out there.
One thing West Virginia has done an amazing job at, and that's through our West Virginia GIS Tech Center, is our flood tool. And it is an amazing tool because you have so many integrated data services within one location. And so you're not only looking at where the floodplain is and where FEMA has readjusted those, but you're looking at the most up-to-date aerial imagery we have. We're looking at LiDAR data, which we've only had one flight of LiDAR data. And FEMA actually did that for us. So that was not a state initiative. So when you sometimes think about like the web services, you have to think about how many different, it's GIS, how many different layers are in that? How many different tools are in that one application? We also have statewide parcels, and we also have a LiDAR tool also. So we do have various different applications, but you are able to go through our clearinghouse and download that data if you choose and make your own web map application, which a lot of our state agencies have done.
Yeah. There was a question from earlier when you guys were talking about paper maps, and there was a question around, what is the main reason why you still have paper maps and not digital? Is it time? Is it money? Is it resources?
I have to say, from our perspective, it is resources, but not understanding the resources that they don't already have in the state. So we have, like I've said a multitude of times, our GIS Tech Center, where they've gone through and modernized our DOT by digitizing every single one of their as-built drawings. Just something is that simple. But this is work that, it's a great experience for an intern, but it's really making a huge impact for the DOT. So it's that not understanding what is possible even within our own state agencies. So it's trying to guide those two, boats down the river together. So that's one big thing that we are trying to really, truly overcome.
And I think in our case, those agencies, may not have known that those options were available. And so the learning, the moving forward, the collaboration with them, speaking with that agency, and showing them and giving them other states as examples. We have a similar situation to what Taryn was just speaking of. And their states was one of the ones that we passed along to, further that initiative. So.
Yeah. A couple more that are coming in from the chat, just around the federal government situation. Are you experiencing that in your states? For example, a pullback of funding or expected data sets?
Not here in Ohio.
I haven't seen it directly hit yet.
I have here in West Virginia. From a federal standpoint, we have a new governor this year. So that's the start. We had one in for 8 years. So we're currently shifting gears. And I'm kind of unsure what that road looks like. So I'm kind of waiting to see what it does look like.
Makes sense. So, I think there's another question here about how at last year's Esri UC, Jack really talked about how challenges require significant collaboration. And I think we've talked a little bit about that today as well. And I think the question kind of comes down to, how do you guys see states creating a GIS ecosystem that enables local governments to meaningfully contribute, but also benefit, and kind of how do you guys respond to that topic?
Yeah, I could start that one off. One of the first things that we had to get this started was, I want to say it was back in the early 2000s, where we had an ad hoc organization that we call the OGRIP Council. That is, it was kind of put together, and then the governor did executive orders for a number of years. Then it finally got codified. So having the Ohio Revised Code that said that our organization is the central GIS coordinating body, and it was made up of local government and state agencies, as well as a couple of private entities. It's really the way to start things out. And then of course they have those user groups and let folks tell you what they need. So that's where I would take things. And of course, we have to stay out of the politics of it, especially in my position. But those are the kinds of things that if you need to get anything done that is well worded from all of the constituents, then you've got an easy path forward, because this is what everyone needs.
Yeah. Well, great. There's a couple of other questions that have come in, and we will answer those after this webinar, but I do want to just have a minute to be able to wrap today's discussion and to ask each of our amazing panelists who have come to share their state's information to provide one key takeaway, whether it's an action item or a piece of advice for those who are looking to modernize their GIS operations. If there's one thing that everybody participating and joining us today should remember, what would be that action item or piece of advice? Heidi, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think being open to learning. I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. And so, in this position, kind of hopping on what Taryn said before, you're learning something every day, whether it be, who is using what part of information, and how, like, if they have like an initiative that they are interested in, I think just being open to those conversations and keeping that collaboration open is really important, and having that buy-in. So when you do have, like I touched on before, when you do have some funding come by, you have that buy-in, you have those plans, and you can move forward. So being prepared.
Yeah. Donovan?
Yeah, absolutely. Internal stakeholder buy-in is key. If you're going to get anywhere, you need their buy-in, because they're not going to open the checkbook up for you if you don't have a good plan. So you got to have them both. Mm-hmm. And you got to know where you're going to go with it, and make sure that that they understand what you're trying to do. And it's very helpful if you have current customers that really appreciate what you've done for them to get out there and tell people about it and let them speak for you as well. Now, you can talk to your blue in the face about how great your program is, but until other people are telling your boss how well it's worked out for them, then they start realizing that there's some value here.
Yeah. Taryn, how about you?
All of those perspectives, but yeah, planning is definitely the takeaway from today, because without a good plan, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Well, as I start to wrap up this conversation, I'm going to keep everybody on the line a little bit longer and share the results that came in from the second poll. I believe you should be able to see some of the answers up on your screen. I just want to take a moment and say, thank you, panelists, for sharing your insights. And to all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate your thoughtful questions and your contributions to our polls. Please be on the lookout for an email. This will include the webinar recording and additional resources. And just to remind you, this session is just one of a couple that'll be coming out through the course of the year from Rock Technologies to help guide state and local governments through GIS modernization. And just remember, Rock Technologies is always here to help. If you're looking for any guidance on how the cloud can support your state modernization efforts, please don't hesitate to reach out. At Rock, we take your GIS to the cloud. Thank you again, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.